So this is the last class for, a couple of weeks. And since the new year, we've been working a lot with awareness. We've been really putting our focus on that. And I think I think for most people, it's a, it's a shift in their practice. It's w- w- working with the previously, we work with the breath a lot. We work with sensations. We work with watching watching thought, watching feeling, watching sensation, as I said. And in the last few months, we've turned the attention around to start to investigate the idea of the watcher, to investigate that which is watching. And I feel like the response from the group has been good, but I also feel that it can be like a difficult practice and it can trip people up. And I've seen it in the questions as well, a certain amount of confusion at times. Um, so I'm not sure what I'm going to be teaching when I come back. So if you have any questions tonight about what we've been on about the last couple of months, then you should ask me. Um, but on one level, meditation is learning to develop the capacity to step outside the conditioned mind, to step outside the conditioned habitual thought patterns. And in a way, that's all we need to know. We use technique such as working with the breath to be able to get to a place where we're not constantly being pulled by the narrative in our mind. We're working with the breath, we're working with focus, we're working with mindfulness to be able to come to that place where we can we can watch and not be pulled away by the stories in the mind. So when we say that we're working with awareness, we are allowing the awareness, we are allowing ourselves to rest in that awareness. We are allowing that awareness to be, if you will, the object of the practice. We're turning our attention away from the furniture in the room and we're looking at the space in the room. We're looking at that sense of openness in the mind. We call it the knower, but we can get tripped up in terminology and like, well, who's watching the watcher? Who's watching the knower? And it's best when you have those thoughts just to let them go and just come back to this place of quietness, alertness, resting. All the practices that we do, all the mindfulness work that we do is to bring us to a place where we can look at our experience in a new and a fresh way. It's to really look and see what this is, what this experience of being somebody is. Last week, I talked about being with the flow in that sense of when we're in our sitting practice, there's a point with when we reach a place of calmness that there's a sense of flow in the body. You're no longer holding, we're no longer trying to grip onto something, but we're just allowing this process of awareness to be. And one of the first places that we notice that is in the body. So we're working with the breath. We are watching the breath. We are aware of what's taking place in the mind. We're not following the narratives in the mind. And we're opening up to just this experience of sitting and breathing. And at some point, there's an energetic response to that. There's an energetic opening to that. So we connect with that. We learn to recognize that. And in some ways, it's nothing other than a mind and awareness that's not tightening. It's not binding. It's just simply resting and being, watching the breath. And from that experience, from that connection, from that opening, then as we move through our day, we are connecting with that feeling of just allowing things to be, allowing for there to be that sense of flow. You just put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. So we're not dwelling on the past, we're not dwelling on the future, we're simply simply being with the activity that's taking place. So the process of working with awareness, developing that sense of observing ourselves, it leads to that place where there is just this simple act of awareness, the simple fact of awareness. And anything else that gets in the way of that, we recognize it and we simply let it go on its way. We start to develop a sense of quietness or a sense of calm within ourselves. We're not commenting on everything that's taking place. We're simply being with the experience that we're with. So we're no longer trying to suppress anything or contain anything. We're simply allowing things to unfold in their own way, but we're not hanging on. We're not grasping. We're resting. We're allowing ourselves to be with whatever situation we find ourselves in. We're just going with that. It's not to say that we don't have discernment. We move towards things that are good, that are wholesome, and we move away from things that we know are not good for us, are not wholesome. But our attitude towards the present moment is no longer one of control. It's simply resting in this awareness, resting in this open place. When we're caught up in a mental state, when we're caught up in an emotion, when we're caught up in thinking about something from the past or perhaps something in the future, we recognize that for what it is. We know that that's where we're at. That's part of the flow too. It's not different. But when we recognize that, there's a certain freedom. We don't have to engage. We don't have to hold on to. So whatever comes up, we watch it. We be with it in an open and peaceful way. You're in a bad mood. You're having a bad morning. Not to worry. We watch it. We know it. We know the mental state for the mental state. But we're not trying to fight it. And through the development of our relationship with awareness, we realize that is where we find refuge. That is where we can stand. And when we begin to realize that, then the stuff that does come up, when shit does happen, it loses its ability to push us around so much. Because we've developed this relationship with awareness. It becomes a certainty. It becomes a certainty. And it may be a certainty for a few moments. That certainty may not last. But as we continue to work with it, we develop a confidence in that certainty. So that's what we've been working towards. That's what we've been working with when we develop mindfulness of the breath, when we develop mindfulness of the mind, the content of mind. We're developing that ability to watch. And at some point, we really start to get the sense of this underlying awareness that's here. And then we begin, which is what we've been doing since January. Then we begin connecting with, relating with that. And learning that that's the refuge. That's the place to rest. And that it's always here. It's always here, regardless of where you find yourself. And that flow of energy in the body that I was talking about when we're meditating, that opening, that's an expression of that awareness. When we're in that place, when the energy is in that place, then we have access to that awareness. We really start to see it or sense it. Can you really be okay with what's taking place? Can you give yourself a break for being who you are, who you think you are? Can you just be okay with that? And realize you're part of something greater. And we put down the struggle, the constant struggle. And it's not that we don't want to do things. We don't want to just sit in a corner necessarily. But do we have to bring so much struggle to what it is that we do? You have pursuits, you have dreams, you have jobs, relationships. When we start to see this, when we really start to have a sense of this awareness that is the underlying constant, we're able to have a much lighter touch with ourselves, with events, and with others. How many times in our life have we gotten really plugged in about something or really upset about something? And the event passes and you look back on it and did I really have to be so invested in my emotional reaction in that situation? So much of what seems so big when we look at it in the rearview mirror is nothing. So implied in that, as we, one of the prerequisites for developing, allowing that flow to happen, allowing that awareness to shine through, is not believing what the mind tells us so quickly, is not believing the narrative so quickly. Whatever your experience is, in any situation, whatever your perception is, it's based on your conditioning. It really is. It's based on your conditioning from the past, and it's based on your mental state in the present moment. And all that is fair enough, it's taking place, but is it the only reality that's there? Is it the only way of being? What was that saying I quoted the other day? Oh yeah, you weren't here. No, no. It was the last class or the class before, and it was like, in Buddhism, we talk about no self. And one of the teachers was saying, it's not that we don't have a self, of course we do, but we just take it too seriously. We take our little vantage point too seriously. So as we learn to rest, as we learn to work with this awareness, we start to have a sense of having this lighter touch. And even when something really grabs you, like, man, this person's really bugging me. Man, that was bad. You know, I'm hurt or I'm hurting or I'm upset or whatever. That's a mental state. It's an emotion. It's chemicals in your bloodstream and in your brain. And it's probably not as important as we think it is. Maybe it is. But when we develop the capacity to have a light touch, then we can be much more discerning of where we put our energy. We can be much more discerning about what really needs, what business needs to be taken care of. This light touch opens up a tremendous clarity. So we're not so lost in the weeds. We spend our whole day, maybe, going through the bulrushes, like, right? Not seeing clearly at all, right? You're walking through this swamp, these bulrushes, and how was your day? Oh, fine. Were we lost in the weeds all day? Did you have a chance to take a breath, or was it just, when they're cutting your feet and your legs and your arms, and it's hot and there's mosquitoes, and you're just in this huge, huge marsh of conditioning, of reaction. How are you doing? Oh, fine. Oh, just great. So developing this relationship with awareness, developing the capacity to be with that, developing the ability to see how we get caught in the weeds, and it takes us away from that perspective. That's what we're trying to do. And we're not necessarily trying to figure out what awareness is. We're not necessarily trying to figure out where awareness is, what awareness is. That takes care of itself. We're allowing awareness to breathe. We're giving it oxygen. We're giving it oxygen to breathe. Being caught up all the time, being stuck in the weeds, we're suffocating that awareness. We're stamping on that flow. So just like we've been developing working with the breath, we are now developing the ability to let awareness breathe, to let it out in the open. So when we're looking at ourselves, we're looking at the present moment, we're looking at our experience. We're looking at that quality, we're sensing that quality of openness, that quality of spaciousness, that quality of clarity. Even when we're stuck in the weeds, we're like, oh yeah, this is the greater context. This is the greater context. And that's actually all we have to do. But the work is continuous, right? And then as we open up to that, then we have different experiences. Sometimes the awareness is scary. Sometimes if it's too much space and we don't feel we have anywhere to land, sometimes it's scary. But we let the awareness breathe. We let it be to the best of our ability. We let it be. And our reaction to it will come and go. We're really exploring a different aspect of ourselves. We're not taking on a belief system. We're exploring a different aspect of ourselves. And sometimes that takes us to strange spaces, places. Uncertainty, the unknown. But in that moment, we relax. We relax with it. So this is what we've been working with. We've been developing with this practice over time. And at some point, it comes down to awareness and working, developing, recognizing, allowing it to breathe. And that becomes the essence of our work. But we don't forget the mindfulness, because we really do need the mindfulness. The breath meditation, the development of concentration, the development of calm is really vitally important as well, because the mind is so tricky. So we develop the ability to become calm and quiet. We develop the ability to come to this place of quietness. And in that place of quietness, that's when the awareness starts to be able to breathe. That's when it opens up. And we realize that that is where we can stand. That is where we can rest.